I'm Jace, and today we're getting into something everyone deals with. Sounding polite in English without even realizing how small choices can change the whole message. And honestly, this topic is fun because we've all made these mistakes.
Absolutely. When you're learning English, you can say something that means one thing in your language, but in English, it comes across totally different, and sometimes not in the best way. I've seen students be surprised when a simple sentence they thought was polite actually sounded a bit sharp.
Yeah, like the classic one, give me the pen. The student thinks, I'm just asking for the pen. But in English, that sounds like you're a boss in a gangster movie. In English culture, tone really matters.
Exactly. A tiny switch like, could you pass me the pen, suddenly makes you sound warm, friendly, respectful. Small changes, big difference.
One that makes me laugh is when someone says, what? Because in some languages, that's normal. But in English, if you say what with no extra word, it's a bit hard, like someone woke up angry.
Yes, and they don't even mean it. They're just trying to hear better. So I always teach, instead of what, go for sorry or pardon, even come again if you're feeling playful.
Or even super simple. Sorry, I didn't catch that. It sounds polite without trying too hard, and people respond better.
A big one I see is with I want. People walk up to a cafe like, I want a coffee. It's grammatically correct, but it's not how native speakers usually order.
Yeah, the energy of I want is like a king walking into his castle. We normally say, can I get, or could I have? It's softer, more natural.
These small details really change how people feel around you. And honestly, once learners start to understand this, their confidence goes way up because suddenly they're not just speaking English, they're communicating smoothly.
And that's what we want today, helping you notice the tiny things that make you sound warm, polite, or unintentionally rude. It's nothing scary, just awareness.
Yeah, none of these mistakes make you a bad speaker. They're super common, but fixing them makes your English sound much more natural.
And we've got a lot more examples coming, including a few that surprise even advanced learners. So stick around.
One thing I really want to dig into is how politeness in English often hides inside small, tiny expressions that don't even seem important at first, like adding just. You wouldn't believe how much that single word softens a request. Instead of, can you help me? You say, can you just help me for a second? Suddenly it feels lighter, less pressure.
Yes, and learners rarely notice this because other languages don't use softeners the same way. They go straight to the point, which is totally fine culturally, but in English, directness has a different flavor. People don't hear confidence, they hear intensity. And when someone's trying to be friendly but accidentally sounds intense, it creates this little awkward moment.
Like when someone messages their teacher or a coworker, explain this. It sounds like an order even though they don't mean it that way. Just adding 3 extra words fixes everything. Could you explain this? Same meaning, new vibe.
Tone is huge in English, and I don't mean pronunciation, I mean the emotional tone. You can have perfect grammar and still sound irritated by accident if you choose the wrong structure. I remember one of my students who always said, wait. Every time someone spoke too quickly, she'd go, wait, and it came off a bit sharp.
Yeah, wait alone sounds like the other person is doing something wrong. But if you say, wait a sec, or hold on, or even 1 second, it becomes casual and friendly. These tiny natural expressions carry so much social meaning.
And let's talk about something a lot of learners do without realizing, giving answers that are too short. In English, a short answer can make you sound upset or uninterested, even when you're totally fine. Like when someone asks, how was the trip? And the learner says, good. That's not rude, but it doesn't keep the interaction warm.
Right, in English we usually add a little more, something like, good, thanks, it was relaxing, or good, a bit long, but nice. Those extra few words show you're open to conversation. You don't have to tell your whole life story, just a small follow-up.
Another classic one is saying what too sharply when you didn't understand something. It always surprises learners when I tell them that native speakers almost never use what by itself unless they're joking or annoyed.
Totally. We usually say, sorry? Or I didn't catch that. Even if we literally didn't hear anything, we still use a polite form. And the funny thing is, native speakers aren't consciously thinking, be polite. It's just instinct.
That's why learning these things makes your English feel natural, because you start sounding like you grew up around the language. Calm, soft, friendly, and not too intense.
Now, another thing students always struggle with is how English speakers disagree politely. In a lot of languages, if you disagree, you just say it, boom, end of story. But in English, we cushion disagreement. If someone says, I think this is the best solution, you don't go straight to no. You start with something like, I see what you mean, but... or that's true, though maybe. Those little phrases protect the relationship.
Exactly. English is very relationship sensitive compared to how direct other cultures are. Even positive things can sound unintentionally rude. I once had a student who used to tell coworkers, I'll correct your mistakes. He wanted to be helpful, but in English, that sounds like you're announcing your superior.
Yeah, it almost sounds like I'm here to fix you. Better versions are, if you ever want help, just let me know, or I can check it with you if you want. It still means you're willing to support them, but it doesn't attack their ability.
And speaking of work, one mistake that causes a lot of misunderstanding is the sentence, you misunderstood me. People say it thinking they're explaining, but it sounds like you're blaming the other person.
Exactly. It's more natural to say, oh, I think I wasn't clear, or let me say it another way. You take the responsibility, even though the other person might still have misunderstood you. It keeps the relationship smooth.
Another one that students don't realize is intense is listen. They use it when they want to explain something important, but in English it sounds like you're about to argue, like, listen, that's wrong. Very aggressive.
Yeah, it's better to say, look, or even so, because those are softer. Even the smallest words carry different levels of energy.
Let's talk about something people rarely teach, polite silence. English uses gentle pauses, small reactions like, oh yeah, really? To show engagement. If someone speaks and you stay completely silent until the end, it can feel a bit cold.
Exactly. English conversations are like a dance. You jump in with little supportive sounds so the other person feels like you're present. These aren't words you memorize, they're habits you build.
And when learners don't use these tiny reactions, they don't mean to be rude. They're just speaking the way they speak in their own language. But in English, silence can be read as distance.
Another one I see a lot is when learners say, what's your problem, as a direct translation when they're confused or curious. But in English, that sounds like a full fight.
Yeah, it's basically an invitation to an argument. A better phrase is, what's going on? Or is everything okay? Completely changes the mood.
And even simple things like the difference between help me and can you help me makes a huge difference. Help me is something you shout in a movie. The polite version is the one with the question form.
And you know what else is interesting? In English, being polite doesn't mean being formal. Many learners think polite equals fancy vocabulary, but the real secret is softness and choice of structure.
Exactly. You don't need academic words, you just need awareness. And when you combine that awareness with the confidence to adjust small things, your English transforms completely.
One last example for this segment. Learners often say, I'm busy in response to invitations, which sometimes feels blunt. You can say it, but a softer version is, I've got something going on that day, or I wish I could, but I have plans. It feels warmer.
Yeah, it shows you still appreciate the invitation. And that's really the heart of sounding polite in English, showing the other person you value them.
These things take time to notice, but once you start paying attention, you'll hear them everywhere. Movies, TV shows, casual conversations. English is full of small signals that help you navigate social interactions smoothly.
And that's why we're breaking down all these examples today, not to overwhelm you, but to give you the feeling of how English really works in everyday life.
Something that really stands out when you pay attention to how English speakers talk is how much kindness is built into everyday language. Even the way people start sentences shows consideration. Like, instead of saying, you're late, someone might say, traffic bad today? They avoid directly pointing the finger.
Yes, and learners often think native speakers are avoiding honesty, but that's not the case. It's just about creating comfort. It's a way of showing, I'm not attacking you, I'm just checking in. That mindset is very different from languages where directness is a sign of honesty or confidence.
And you know what's interesting? Sometimes the rude version doesn't sound rude because of the grammar. It sounds rude because of timing. For example, answering too quickly, too sharply, or too flat can make the other person feel like something is wrong.
Exactly. For instance, someone asks, "Do you want to grab lunch later?" And the learner answers, "No, busy." It's correct, but the rhythm feels cold. Adding just a small phrase like, "I can't today, but thanks," completely changes the energy.
And that rhythm thing really matters. English has this sort of soft wave pattern in casual conversation. People stretch sounds slightly, they add gentle pauses, and they don't rush to the main point. So when a learner jumps straight into the main message, "I need this, do that, you are wrong," native speakers feel the difference immediately.
And the funny part is, learners aren't trying to be rude, they're usually being efficient. But in English, efficient sometimes reads as cold. That's why adding small helper words makes everything warmer. Could you? Maybe. I was thinking, I'm wondering if. These don't change the message, they change the mood.
I remember one student who used to tell teachers, "Explain again." She didn't mean anything bad, she thought she was being clear, but it sounded like a command every time. Once she switched to, "Can you explain that again?" the whole classroom interacted with her differently.
I love stories like that because they show how small the difference is. It's literally 3 or 4 extra syllables, and suddenly you come across friendly instead of demanding.
Another mistake that learners make is asking questions that sound too intense because of the literal translation. Like when they ask, "Why you say that?" or "Why you do that?" In their language, it might be neutral, but in English, it almost sounds like they're accusing someone.
Right, and English softens why naturally. You'll hear people say, "What makes you say that?" Or, "Oh, how come?" These versions feel curious instead of confrontational.
Another area where politeness gets tricky is when learners try to give compliments, but the structure doesn't match English style, like saying, "You look tired today." They mean they care, but it sounds like you're pointing out something negative.
Oh, yes, compliments require sensitivity in English. If you want to show you care, you usually avoid focusing on someone's physical state unless it's positive. Instead of, "You look tired," you might say, "You okay today?" Or, "How's your day going?" You're still being kind, just in a softer way.
This also connects to emotional language. Learners sometimes say, "I don't like this," very bluntly. Totally normal in their culture, but in English, people often use, "I'm not a big fan of that," or "It's not really my thing." Same meaning, but softer.
Yes, we use these softeners all the time. Native speakers rarely say something directly negative without padding it a bit. Even in professional settings, you'll hear things like, "That might be challenging," which actually means, "That's not a good idea." If you take English literally, you'll misunderstand half the politeness.
And this works both ways. Sometimes a learner apologizes too strongly. They say, "I'm so sorry, I will never do this again," even when it was a tiny mistake like sending a file late.
Yes, and then the other person gets confused because the apology sounds dramatic. A simple, "Sorry about the delay," is enough. English tends to keep apologies light unless it's a big issue.
Another funny one is when learners say, "You must do this." Again, grammatically, it's okay, but in English, it sounds like an order from a boss. "You should try this," or "You might want to try this," is much friendlier.
I used to hear students say, "Give me your number," when they wanted a coworker's contact for a project, and you can imagine how that sounds in English. It's better to say, "Can I get your number?" or "Could we exchange numbers?" The softer version helps the relationship.
And also keeps them from sounding like a movie villain.
Exactly. English politeness is almost like putting cushions around your sentences. You still say what you want, but everything feels safe and comfortable.
Another interesting thing is how English handles refusal. Learners often go straight to no. It's clear, but it feels abrupt. English speakers usually wrap the refusal in something softer. "I wish I could, but I can't." "I would love to, but I'm busy today." "That sounds great, but I'm not free." It's a balance between honesty and kindness.
And it's not fake, it's respectful. It shows you appreciate the offer even if you can't accept it. This keeps the connection positive.
Something else people don't realize is that even helpful sentences can sound rude without context, like, you need to calm down. In English, that phrase almost never calms anyone down. It usually makes things worse.
Yes, a better way is take your time or it's okay, we can handle it. English avoids telling people what to feel. Instead, it offers reassurance.
And when it comes to group situations, like meetings, learners sometimes forget the polite opening phrases. They jump straight into the main point, which makes them sound impatient. Starting with something small like, I had a thought, or I wanted to share something, softens the entrance.
Even the way English gives suggestions is polite. Instead of do this, you hear maybe try this. It's not about being uncertain, it's about giving the other person space.
And honestly, once you start using these softeners, people will tell you your English suddenly feels more natural without even knowing why. It's because you're matching the emotional patterns of the language.
Being polite in English isn't about being perfect. It's about showing awareness, and that awareness makes conversations smoother, friendships stronger, and misunderstandings fewer. And honestly, it makes speaking English more enjoyable.
Another thing I've noticed while teaching is how learners handle appreciation. They often say thanks very quickly, almost like they're completing a task. And it's totally fine, but English has this habit of stretching gratitude just a little. Instead of a fast thanks, it's more natural to say, thanks, I appreciate it, or thanks, that helps a lot. It doesn't take extra effort, it just feels warmer.
Right, because in English, appreciation is almost a tiny conversation inside the conversation. People don't just say thank you, they show a little reaction with it. And learners who adopt that habit immediately sound more connected. It's interesting how these tiny pieces add up.
They really do. And then you have the opposite situation, when learners say something too strong because they're trying to be honest, like, this is bad. In English, directly labeling something as bad can be harsh. People usually go for gentler versions, like, it's not working, or it needs a little improvement.
Or maybe we can make this better. You're still being honest, you're just delivering it in a way that keeps the door open instead of shutting it. Politeness in English isn't about hiding your opinion. It's about respecting the other person while sharing it.
Exactly. And that goes for humor, too. I think sometimes learners try to joke the same way they do in their own language, but English humor relies a lot on tone. A sentence that looks funny on paper can sound rude if the tone is off.
Tone is everything. Even sarcasm is complicated. A lot of native speakers use sarcasm with friends, but it's subtle. When learners try to use it directly, it sometimes lands too sharp. That's why I always tell students to practice friendly humor first. Things like, oh wow, that's a challenge, or I think my brain needs a break after this. It's safe, light, and still funny.
You know what else is tricky? Text messages. Politeness becomes even more important because the other person can't hear your voice. For example, if you text wait, it sounds cold. If you text wait a second, it sounds normal. A tiny difference, big effect.
Or when learners text, "Where are you?" to coworkers. It can sound like a boss doing a checkup. But, hey, are you nearby? Or are you on your way? Feels friendly. Texting in English has its own politeness style.
Something similar happens in group chats. Learners often use the word guys in every situation, and it's okay with friends, but in work chats, it might feel too casual. Something like everyone or team keeps things balanced.
Exactly. It's not about being stiff. It's about understanding context. English changes tone depending on where you are, who you're talking to, and what the relationship is. Once learners start noticing these layers, they become so much more confident.
And honestly, understanding these polite, rude differences is one of the biggest steps to sounding natural, because English speakers care a lot about the feeling behind the words. You could have perfect grammar and still make someone uncomfortable, or you could have imperfect grammar but amazing politeness, and people will love talking to you.
I think that's the real beauty of English communication. It's not about being flawless, it's about being thoughtful. When learners mix those small softeners into their speech, like, could you, maybe, I think, if you want, everything feels smoother. You become someone people naturally enjoy talking to.
And the cool thing is once you start applying these, they become automatic. At first you think about them, but after a while, they just flow. Your brain learns to communicate in English emotionally, not just grammatically.
And that's when you know your English isn't only correct, it's connected.
Thanks for listening today. If you're enjoying these episodes and want more natural, real conversations to help you level up your English, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next.